I was faced with my biggest challenge yet. I lost my star quarterback to Kentucky in the transfer portal, and if the incoming recruits didn't step up this season, this team would have a rough year. Fortunately, I recruited one of the greatest classes ever with 9 total 5-star recruits, and I created a new offensive playbook for this season which was focused on running the ball almost every play. To be successful in doing this, I had to use a quick and elusive quarterback, and I felt like 5-star recruit Bobby Babcock was the perfect fit for my offense. However, not every freshman was off to a good start as Mike Samuel lost the ball on his first rush, which led to the Hoosiers scoring first. It was looking like it would be a long day, but that wouldn't be the case. After back-to-back 17-play drives that ended in touchdowns, it was tied, and then we took the lead right here. Unfortunately, Indiana would go up by 3 points to start the fourth quarter, but I had a plan to make sure we secured the win. I wanted Bobby Babcock to burn as much clock as he could while we moved down the field, and by the time he made a miracle play scrambling in for the go-ahead touchdown, there was no time left, so we started the year 1-0. Mike Tyler chose to transfer to Kentucky after playing for me for 3 years, and he seemed like he was a brand new player. I could have never imagined him pulling off a rushing touchdown like this, and I still don't know how he did it with his 59 speed since I had to change my entire offense for him. Anyway, I was happy that I had Bobby Babcock now because he was the running quarterback I needed for my system, and additionally, he could throw some hot dots. The freshman still made some mistakes, but I was thrilled to see what the future had in store for the former 5-star recruit. I could tell that my new offensive game plan was tiring out the opposing teams, and we went into halftime with a lead. Then, to start the third quarter, another one of my 5-star recruits from this offseason, wide receiver Josh Wilson, pulled off this incredible 103-yard kick return to put us up 11 on the Wildcats. And from there, Bobby Babcock continued to shine, finding senior Tyler Starks for 6. I knew Mike Tyler well, so he couldn't do anything against my defense, and after Curtis Bruner picked up his 4th touchdown of the season, where he took this halfback screen 29 yards to the house untouched, we sealed our Governor Cup victory, and all of a sudden, we weren't terrible anymore. But I was not happy we started off our game against Virginia Tech by giving up a 47-yard play to the Hokies, as they completely embarrassed my defense in the span of just 2 plays. I needed Bobby Babcock to lead us down the field to tie it, and when I said that, I was expecting like 15 consecutive runs to score, but instead, I sat back and watched Wade Roberts, the backup tight end, put on a show. This offense was bringing me so much joy, and I was loving every second of it. However, undefeated Virginia Tech continued to score touchdowns as well, and this one could come down to the wire. My defense just wasn't able to get a stop, so it was a good thing that my offensive play calling was elite. On 3rd and short, I made sure we got it to the outside of a stacked box, and Josh Wilson finished the playoff with his speed. There was something about the freshman that was just special. He had another great return for us, getting us all the way down to the Hokies' 42-yard line, and after Virginia Tech went up by 6, Bobby Babcock had his chance to win us the game. With less than a minute left, he continued to pick up first downs, and Cardinal Stadium erupted after this play. We somehow beat a ranked team, and that put us into the AP poll. For the first time in my career, I was the head coach of a top 25 team, and Bobby Babcock was ready to continue moving us up the polls. He was running the ball like he was a running back, breaking tackles from the Blue Devils left and right, and the threat of him scrambling made him almost impossible to stop. Instead of taking our 3, I thought it was a good idea to run a fake field goal, and unfortunately, that ended up being a useless play as we wound up settling for 3 anyway. Duke's offense came alive at the end of the second quarter with back-to-back touchdowns, but we stayed in the game with senior running back Curtis Bruner doing his part in carrying the offense down the field. That drive would result in a touchdown that was inches away from being a turnover, and from there, we would begin to pull away with the game. Duke tried their hardest to stay in it, but after the rain caused this drop on 4th and 2, we would run out the rest of the clock, and then the worst news in the world hit my desk. Bobby Babcock was out for the season with a broken vertebrae, so I was stuck playing senior Ronnie Mitchell, and he just wasn't as good as the freshman quarterback. He was great for the locker room, but when you fumble the ball away like this and give the Cavaliers a 14-point lead at the beginning of the game, you can't be QB1. Like my first year at Louisville, we started down 3 possessions to Virginia, but unlike that game, a comeback didn't seem possible. And by the time Ronnie Mitchell got into a rhythm, it was just too late. We did not manage the clock well today, and if we wanted any chance in winning the ACC, we'd have to figure it out, so I made a new plan to win games with this team. And since my defense was by far the weakest part of the roster, I decided that we would chew the clock. However, this would only work if my offense could match the touchdowns given up, and after this extremely frustrating start, I realized that maybe my game plan wasn't so genius after all. Fortunately, Ronnie Mitchell somehow ended the half with this miraculous touchdown throw, and I realized that we could stay in this game while burning the clock in the third quarter. It was simple, but it was really effective for moving the ball, and after a 19-play drive, we finally scored. Then our defense got this huge third down stop, and that was all we needed to win against Clemson at home. Limiting possessions was extremely smart, and I felt like we could win the ACC doing this. Even though watching this offense was the equivalent of watching paint dry, it was working better than I ever expected it to. We held the ball throughout the entire first quarter, and then we finally had our first big play of the game with this 25-yard pickup. To end the longest drive in college football history, Ronnie Mitchell ran it in, and after our defense got this huge third down stop, Boston College knew they weren't seeing the ball for the rest of the half. We ended the second quarter going up 2 possessions, but the Eagles stayed in the game, scoring on their second drive of the day, and then Curtis Bruner fumbled the ball away just plays later. This was exactly why I wanted to limit the number of possessions there were in our matchups, and I was hoping this would be the final drive of the entire game. With 2 minutes left, we still had possession of the ball, and Ronnie Mitchell thread the needle to Josh Wilson, but it might have been too soon. Boston College still had 30 seconds to go down the field and tie it up. However, it wouldn't matter because freshman linebacker Shredrick Bailey came up with this amazing interception and took it back to the house to secure our 6th win of the season. This was the most important game of the year, and if we wanted to make the ACC championship, we'd have to pull off the upset. Also, while we're speaking about underdogs, I have to briefly mention this channel's biggest sponsor, Underdog Fantasy. They'll give you free cash to play around with on player pick'ems like the one I nailed right here, and to get yours, sign up using code Bordeaux or the first link in my description. That'll double your initial deposit, so if you put in like $10, you get $20, and that gives you something to play around with. And if you didn't know, Underdog Fantasy is available to play in all of the yellow states here, but let's find out if we can pull off the upset. Florida State started with a lead, but I was glad we held the Seminoles to just 3 on their opening drive. If Ronnie Mitchell was as fast as injured quarterback Bobby Babcock, this could have potentially been a touchdown run. However, since he wasn't, we had a lot more clock we could drain, and we scored with 2 minutes left in the half. That gave Florida State a lot of time still, but they didn't take advantage of it, so we could potentially get more points before the end of the second quarter, which is exactly what we were able to do. And since we got the ball to start the second half, we got to burn through even more clock, and I was super impressed with freshman 5-star recruit Mike Samuel here. He was going to be the starting halfback next season, and even though this 4th down play couldn't have gone worse, our defense was doing very well the few times they were on the field. I'm not quite sure why Florida State punted it to us here, but they'd never get the ball back after that, and we got our biggest win of the season. After starting the year 7-1, things were looking really good for the Cardinals, and I knew at the end of this season I was going to get a lot of job offers from even bigger programs, but I wasn't sure if I was ready to leave the Ville. So I'll have to make that decision at the end of the year, but for now, we were off to an amazing start against Syracuse, and if we won out in ACC play, we'd make the conference championship. To start the second quarter, I couldn't believe how wide open tight end Greg Smith got, but after Syracuse responded back instantly on the next drive, I hoped he could do it again. With 20 seconds left in the second half, it looked like our tight end couldn't quite get his feet in, but after it was reviewed, he was awarded the touchdown. We went up 6 to start the fourth quarter, and we were going to need to come up with a big stop sometime soon. Fortunately, on 4th and short, I called the perfect coverage needed to hold the orange, and that would seal the game for us, which kept us ahead in the ACC race. Notre Dame scored within the first minute the following week, and even though they weren't having a good year, things were not going our way. We couldn't pick up this much needed first down, and after the play, Curtis Bruner wouldn't get up. Since we were already losing by 14, I felt like we had to go for it here, and thank goodness it worked, but with our starting running back out for the season with a torn Achilles, we could barely move the ball. I didn't quite know what to do offensively anymore, so we just settled for 3, and things would continue to go downhill from there with Notre Dame running up the score. over. Once we fell behind 18, we couldn't run the ball like we normally would, and we got exposed on the road. Even though this didn't count as an ACC loss, my team was without their starting quarterback and running back for the rest of the season, so we were in trouble. Even though Wake Forest only had won 2 games so far, they were giving us all sorts of issues as we only scored 3 in the first half. And even though my defense did a pretty solid job locking the Demon Deacons up, it just wouldn't be enough. They continued to score on us, and my offense was fighting their hardest to stay in it, but nothing seemed to be going our way. After being marked short, we had to take 3, and Wake Forest kept responding. I was proud of how the defense played, but offensively, it was a mess, and if you thought this loss hurt us, you should have seen the way my team walked off the field after this one ended. They played their hearts out, and they did their best to keep it close, but that still wasn't enough. Over 4 quarters, NC State proved that they were the better team, and I realized we had a lot of injuries, exceeded expectations, and got a little lucky, but after such a promising start, we didn't deserve to end our season like this. I couldn't believe we missed the ACC championship, and to end my 3rd year at Louisville, I had to coach in the Cheez-It Bowl. Even though things ended very differently than I would have liked, I have to mention all the positives from the season, and the first one is quarterback Bobby Babcock being back from injury next year. The freshman was the key to our offense and a great start, so having him healthy again will make things a lot better. And even though we gave up a touchdown here, the defense improved a ton. So I'm excited to see how next year goes with them playing this well and our starting QB back. Lastly, I have to mention the new offensive schemes that I've created. I think it's the biggest takeaway from the year, as I found something that works for us, and as long as we continue to improve, I'll be proud of this team, but we need to focus so we can end the season right. And I guess 9 wins and a Cheez-It Bowl trophy will do. I can't wait to see what this team has in store next year, and that's assuming I stay because I got a lot of good offers.